Tonight we are not climbing mountains. We are not sailing across stormy seas. And thankfully, nobody is asking us to fight a dragon before bedtime. Instead, we are taking a much quieter journey, one that begins on a narrow old street, long after everyone else has gone to sleep. So, if you're nice and comfortable, maybe pull your blanket up just a little more. Let your shoulders relax. Take a slow breath. We are about to step into a place where time has been moving very, very slowly for hundreds of years. Our story begins just after midnight. The town is almost silent. The last candle has gone out in most windows, and even the neighborhood cats seem too sleepy to argue with each other tonight. A soft wind slips through the old stone streets, carrying the faint smell of rain and old wood. Somewhere far away, church bell quietly marks the passing hour. Then everything becomes still again. At the end of a small alley stands a workshop. It is easy to miss during the day. Its wooden sign has faded so much that only a few letters can still be read. The windows are covered with a thin layer of dust, and climbing ivy has slowly wrapped itself around the old bricks, as if nature has been patiently giving the building a gentle hug for many years. But tonight, a warm golden light shines through one small window. Someone is still awake. The heavy wooden door opens with a soft creak. Not the scary movie kind of creak, just the kind that says, "I have been opening and closing since before your great-great-grandparents were born." Inside, the workshop feels like stepping into another century. The room is filled with shelves from floor to ceiling. Every shelf holds clocks. Big clocks, small clocks, round clocks, tall clocks. Some wear polished brass. Others hide inside dark wooden cases carved with flowers and leaves. A few have cracked faces. Some have missing hands. Others have not ticked in decades. Dust floats gently through the candlelight like tiny golden snowflakes that forgot which season they belong to. The air smells of polished wood, old paper, warm wax, and a little bit of machine oil. It is not a strong smell. It is calm, comfortable, the kind of smell that makes you think this room has been carefully looked after for a very long time. In the middle of the workshop sits an elderly watchmaker. His hair has turned completely silver. Small round glasses rest near the end of his nose. His hands are covered with tiny lines earned after many years of careful work. They are not fast hands anymore. They do not need to be. They are patient hands. A tiny screwdriver rests between his fingers as he leans over an ancient clock resting on his workbench. Tick, pause, brush, pause, clink. Every sound is soft enough that it almost disappears into the silence. The watchmaker rarely speaks. There is no one here to talk to anyway, unless you count the clocks. And after enough years spent repairing old timepieces, perhaps they become quiet companions. He gently smiles as he lifts a small brass gear into the candlelight. Some people see an old gear. He sees a story. Every clock inside this workshop once belonged to someone. Perhaps a sailor carried one across rough seas while searching for distant shores. Perhaps a teacher checked another before welcoming children into a tiny classroom. Perhaps one stood proudly on a fireplace while birthdays were celebrated, letters were opened, and families gathered together on cold winter evenings. A clock quietly watches life happen. It never asks for attention. It simply keeps counting the moments. The watchmaker believes every old clock remembers something. Not with words, of course. Clocks are very good at ticking, but they are terrible at writing diaries. Instead, they remember through worn gears, faded numbers, tiny scratches, and polished edges, left behind by hands that touched them long ago. He reaches toward another shelf. There stands a tall grandfather clock, nearly twice his height. Its wooden case is dark with age, and delicate carvings twist around the edges like climbing vines. The pendulum inside has not moved for many years, yet somehow it still looks proud, standing patiently in the corner. Nearby rests a small French mantel clock with elegant golden decorations curling around its face. Next to it waits a sturdy carriage clock that may once have traveled in horse-drawn coaches over rough country roads. Pocket watches fill small drawers lined with faded velvet. Some are silver, some are brass, some are so tiny they almost disappear into the watchmaker's palm. Each one waits quietly, not impatiently, just hopefully. The workshop itself seems frozen between yesterday and tomorrow. A tiny broom leans against one wall. Old books filled with careful notes sit stacked on a nearby table. Small glass bottles hold delicate screws no bigger than grains of rice. Neatly folded cloths wait beside polished tools. Nothing is rushed. Nothing feels out of place. Even the silence seems organized. Outside, the wind brushes gently against the window. Inside, another candle flickers. Its warm light dances across hundreds of clock faces. For just a moment, it almost feels as though every clock is watching the watchmaker as carefully. As he watches them, he reaches for the oldest clock in the room. It is not the biggest. It is not the prettiest. In fact, it looks rather tired. This wooden case is faded. This brass has grown dull. The hands no longer point anywhere useful. A thin crack stretches across its face like a tiny river on an old map. Many people would see something broken. The watchmaker sees something waiting. Very carefully, he brushes away a layer of dust that has rested there for years. The dust rises into the candlelight before quietly drifting back down again. He places the clock on a soft cloth. No sudden movements, no loud tools, no hurry. Ancient clocks dislike being hurried almost as much as sleepy people dislike loud alarm clocks. On Monday mornings, he studies every tiny detail. One loose screw, a worn spring, a bent gear, a faded maker's mark carved into the back long ago. He does not begin repairing it just yet. First, he simply looks, really looks, because before fixing something old, you must understand the life it has already lived. The workshop grows even quieter. The candles burn lower. Outside, clouds slowly drift across the moon. Inside, hundreds of silent clocks wait together in peaceful stillness. Their hands may have stopped long ago, but somehow the room still feels full of time. And as the old watchmaker gently opens the back of the ancient clock for the very first time, revealing a world of tiny brass gears hidden inside, our own quiet journey is only just beginning. As the old watchmaker gently lifts the back panel from the ancient clock, a tiny world hidden for centuries quietly reveals itself. There are no glowing screens, no batteries, no wires, just hundreds of small brass pieces resting patiently together, each one depending on the next. At first glance, it almost looks confusing. Tiny gears of different sizes sit beside delicate springs. Thin steel levers rest between polished wheels. Everything seems impossibly small, yet every piece has an important job. The watchmaker leans a little closer. He doesn't rush. Old clocks appreciate patience, and so do sleepy storytellers. If you look closely, you might notice something surprising. A mechanical clock isn't very different from a team of people working together. One gear begins the work, another passes it along, another slows everything down, and another quietly keeps the rhythm steady. No one piece tries to do everything alone. Perhaps there is a small lesson hidden in that. The watchmaker smiles softly as he picks up the first brass gear. It is smooth around the edges, worn shiny after many years of turning. Tiny teeth circle its edge, like a miniature golden crown. Those little teeth fit perfectly into another gear beside it. If even one tooth breaks, the whole clock begins to struggle, rather like trying to ride a bicycle with one missing pedal. You might still move forward, but it certainly won't be graceful. He places the gear onto a clean cloth before reaching for another. This one is even smaller, so small that someone with sleepy eyes might mistake it for a button. Every gear has a different size because every gear turns at a different speed. Some spin quickly. Others move so slowly that you would hardly notice them moving at all. Yet together, they perform a beautiful dance that has been repeated every second of every day. For hundreds of years, the watchmaker has seen this dance thousands of times. Even after all these years, it never becomes boring. Outside, the wind brushes gently against the workshop window. Inside, the candle flame flickers, making tiny golden reflections dance across the polished brass. The room feels warm, comfortable, peaceful. The old clock has another secret hidden inside, a tightly wound spring. Today, we simply wind a watch or replace a battery without thinking much about it. But long before electricity, springs were tiny storage boxes for energy. When someone turned the winding key, the spring slowly tightened. It didn't release all its energy at once. Instead, it shared that energy little by little, hour after hour, day after day. Rather generous for a little piece of metal. The watchmaker carefully examines the spring. It has grown tired with age. Not broken, just tired. Metal becomes tired too, after working faithfully for hundreds of years. He gently places it beside the gears. Soon, he reaches one of the most important parts of the clock, the escapement. It has a rather dramatic name for such a tiny piece. It sounds like something escaping from prison. Thankfully, nothing exciting like that is happening tonight. The escapement has one simple job. It tells the clock not to rush. Imagine if all the stored energy inside the spring escaped at once. The hands would spin around the clock face faster than anyone could read them. You would probably be late for everything, and somehow also early. Instead, the escapement quietly says, "Easy now. One little step, then another. Tick, tick, tick." Without the escapement, there would be no steady heartbeat inside the clock. The watchmaker gently wipes the tiny piece with a soft cloth until it shines again. Nearby rests the pendulum. It hangs silently beneath the old clock, waiting for its turn. The pendulum is wonderfully simple. It swings one way, then back again, again, and again, hour after hour, day after day, sometimes for generations. People often think the gears keep perfect time, but in truth, The pendulum quietly leads the whole orchestra. The gears simply follow its rhythm, like dancers listening carefully to gentle music. The watchmaker gives the pendulum the smallest touch. It moves, left, right, slowly, peacefully. Watching a pendulum swing can make almost anyone feel calmer. Perhaps that is why old clock shops always seem so relaxing. Everything moves without hurry. Many centuries ago, building a clock like this was considered one of the greatest engineering achievements in the world. Long before factories filled cities, skilled craftsmen worked entirely by hand. Every tiny tooth on every gear had to be cut with incredible care. Every screw was shaped by patient hands. Every spring was carefully made using heat, skill, and years of practice. One mistake could ruin weeks of work. That is why becoming a clockmaker was never quick. Young apprentices often spent years simply watching their masters. Then they learned how to clean tools, then polish brass, then cut simple parts. Only after many years were they trusted to repair valuable clocks. Patience was not just a useful skill, it was part of the job itself. The old watchmaker remembers his own teacher. Many years ago, when his own hair was dark and his hands moved much faster, an elderly master placed an old pocket watch in front of him. The young apprentice had immediately reached for his tools. His teacher gently stopped him. "Not yet," the old master had whispered. "First, listen." At first, the young apprentice heard nothing. Then, very softly, tick, 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 his teacher smiled. A clock will often tell you what is wrong, if you are patient enough to hear it. The watchmaker has never forgotten those words. Even now, after decades of quiet work, he still spends more time listening than repairing. Every clock has its own voice. Some tick deeply, some sound light and cheerful, some seem almost shy. No two clocks sound exactly the same. Perhaps that is because no two lives are exactly the same either. The ancient clock resting on his bench has remained silent for many years. But silence does not mean its story has ended. It simply means it has been waiting. The watchmaker gently arranges every cleaned gear into neat little rows across the cloth. Each piece now catches the warm candlelight. Each piece is ready for the careful work ahead. Outside, the moon drifts slowly across the sky. Inside, the workshop remains peaceful. Shelves filled with quiet clocks stand like old friends watching patiently. The air smells faintly of wood, warm wax, and polished brass. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels forgotten. The watchmaker takes one last careful look at the ancient mechanism before reaching for the smallest brush on his workbench. Now that he understands the hidden language of this remarkable clock, it is finally time to begin. The delicate task of bringing every tiny piece back to life. The old watchmaker reaches for the smallest brush on his workbench. It has soft, fine bristles, worn smooth after many years of careful use. It is not a fancy tool. In fact, someone walking into the workshop might mistake it for an old paintbrush that should have been thrown away years ago. But the watchmaker would never throw it away. Some tools earn retirement. Others simply become better with age. He gently brushes the first brass gear. A tiny cloud of dust lifts into the warm candlelight before slowly floating back down again. The dust has been resting here for decades, maybe even a century. It has patiently waited through cold winters, Warm summers, rainy afternoons, and countless quiet nights like this one. Tonight, its long nap finally comes to an end. The watchmaker smiles to himself. "I'm sorry," he whispers so softly that only the clocks could hear, "but you've had quite enough sleep." One by one, the tiny gears begin to shine again. Not perfectly. Old clocks should never look brand new. Their scratches tell stories. Their worn edges prove they have lived long and useful lives. The goal is not to erase history. The goal is to help history keep moving. Outside, gentle rain begins to fall. Small drops tap softly against the workshop window. Tap, tap, tap. It is the perfect soundtrack for slow work. The candle beside the workbench flickers gently, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Every now and then, the golden light catches a polished gear, making it sparkle for just a moment before fading back into the soft glow of the room. The workshop feels warm, safe, almost forgotten by the outside world. The watchmaker reaches for a tiny glass bottle filled with a special cleaning solution. He dips the smallest brush into the liquid and carefully cleans each gear. Not too much, not too little. Ancient brass can be stubborn. It appreciates kindness more than force. As each gear becomes cleaner, beautiful golden colors slowly appear beneath the years of dust. It is almost like watching sunrise happen in miniature. Nearby, dozens of little trays sit neatly arranged across the workbench. Each tray holds different parts. Tiny screws, small pins, curved springs, delicate levers. Nothing is mixed together, because if one tiny screw disappears, well, somewhere inside this workshop, there is probably a spider living in a very expensive little house built entirely from missing clock parts. The watchmaker chuckles quietly at the thought. Perhaps that explains why the spiders never seem interested in leaving. He carefully places every cleaned piece onto a folded linen cloth. Each one waits patiently for its turn to return home. Next comes the pivots. These tiny metal points allow the gears to turn smoothly inside the clock. Over many years, old oil becomes thick. Dust sticks to it. Movement becomes slower, like trying to run through deep mud while wearing boots that are 2 sizes too big. The watchmaker gently wipes away every trace of old oil using a soft cloth wrapped around a slender wooden stick. The work is slow. Very slow, but somehow that is exactly what makes it satisfying. Nothing is rushed. Every movement has purpose. The room falls almost completely silent again. Only the rain continues outside, and somewhere in the workshop, a single repaired clock quietly ticks. Tick, tick, tick. It sounds almost like gentle breathing. The watchmaker pauses for a moment just to listen. He believes every workshop should have at least one clock ticking. Otherwise, the room feels lonely. He reaches for a small bottle containing fresh clock oil. Now this part requires great care. Many people think more oil must be better. The watchmaker knows the opposite is true. One tiny drop. That is enough. 2 drops. Now the clock begins collecting dust all over again. Old clocks are surprisingly picky, almost as picky as cats deciding where to sleep. He places a tiny drop onto each pivot. The oil catches the candlelight before disappearing into the metal. Simple, quiet, perfect. Next comes one of the smallest screws. It is hardly bigger than a grain of rice. The watchmaker picks it up using delicate tweezers. His hands remain steady, not because they are young, but because they have repeated this movement thousands upon thousands of times. Experience has its own kind of strength. The screw slides gently back into place. Not too tight, not too loose, just enough. Everything inside an old clock depends on balance. Too much pressure, nothing moves. Too little, everything shakes. Life itself sometimes feels a little like that. A careful balance often works better than rushing from one extreme to another. The watchmaker now examines one damaged gear. Several teeth have become bent after many years. He places it beneath a small magnifying lens. Through the glass, the tiny gear suddenly looks enormous. Each little tooth becomes easy to see. Using a fine polishing tool, he slowly reshapes every bent edge. One, then another, then another. There is no hurry. The rain outside grows steadier. The warm smell of old wood mixes with melted candle wax. The workshop almost seems to breathe with the rhythm of the weather. Along one wall stands a row of old wooden clock cases waiting for repair. Some have faded varnish. Others carry tiny cracks that have appeared over generations. The watchmaker gently rubs natural wax into one weathered case. The dry wood slowly drinks it in. Almost immediately, its deep color begins returning. Rich browns, golden lines, beautiful patterns hidden beneath years of neglect. He smiles. Wood has a wonderful habit of rewarding patience. Soon he carefully polishes the brass dial. Little by little, faded numbers become easier to read. The old hands are cleaned but not replaced. Their slight wear reminds everyone that this clock has already measured thousands of ordinary mornings and peaceful evenings. Replacing them would erase part of its journey. The watchmaker would never do that unless absolutely necessary. Finally, he lays every restored piece across the workbench. The gears, the springs, the pivots, the screws, the polished dial, the cleaned hands. Everything is ready. Outside, the rain begins to fade. The clouds slowly drift apart, allowing pale moonlight to shine through the workshop window. Once again, the room feels even quieter now. The candles burn lower. Dust no longer hides the brass. Instead, warm golden reflections dance gently across every carefully restored piece. The hardest part has not been cleaning the clock. The hardest part has been showing enough patience to let every piece receive the attention it deserves. The old watchmaker folds his cloth, sets his brush aside, and takes one slow breath. Tomorrow, someone might look at this clock and simply see an old machine. But tonight, he sees something very different. He sees hundreds of tiny pieces, each with a purpose, waiting to become one heartbeat again. And with everything now cleaned, polished, and carefully prepared, the time has finally come to begin putting the ancient clock back together, one gentle piece at a time. The watchmaker begins placing the first gear back into the ancient clock. Fits perfectly. Tiny click. Nothing loud. Nothing dramatic. Just one small piece quietly returning to the place where it belongs. Then comes another gear, and another. Slowly, the empty clock begins to look alive again. As he works, the old watchmaker often wonders about the people who once cared for these clocks, not their famous moments, not the stories written in history books. He thinks about ordinary days, the quiet moments, because old clocks spend far more time watching everyday life than exciting adventures. He gently picks up a small silver pocket watch from a nearby tray. Its surface is covered with tiny scratches, each one earned over many years. He opens the case. Inside, the hands have stopped at exactly 7:18. No one knows why. Perhaps the spring finally gave up. Or perhaps its owner simply never wounded again. The watchmaker smiles. "I wonder where you traveled," he whispers. "Maybe this little watch once crossed great oceans inside the pocket of a sailor." Imagine standing on the deck of a wooden ship. The sea stretches in every direction. The waves rise and fall beneath the moonlight. The wind fills the sails. The sailor reaches into his coat, opens the little watch, and quietly checks the hour before. Beginning another long night at sea. That same watch may have listened to storms. It may have watched dolphins swim beside the ship. It may even have crossed oceans that most people only dreamed about. Now, after hundreds of years, it rests peacefully inside this quiet workshop. The watchmaker places it gently back onto its velvet cloth. Nearby sits a beautiful mantel clock decorated with delicate golden flowers. Its wooden case is polished smooth from years of careful cleaning. He imagines it standing proudly above a fireplace in a warm family home. Perhaps it was given as a wedding gift. A young couple unwraps it with smiling faces. Friends clap. Someone laughs. Children run through the room while dinner fills the house with wonderful smells. Every hour, the little clock softly chimes. It watches birthdays. It watches holidays. It watches happy conversations that lasted late into the evening. Years pass. Children grow up. Grandchildren arrive. The clock remains exactly where it has always been, quietly keeping time without asking for anything in return. The watchmaker believes that is rather noble. On another shelf rests a much larger clock. Its face is simple. This wooden case is plain. There is nothing fancy about it. Yet somehow it feels important. Perhaps because it once belonged inside a monastery. Long before alarm clocks and smartphones, monks depended on large mechanical clocks to guide their daily lives. Before sunrise, the bell would ring. Time for morning prayers. Later, time for work. Later still, time for meals. Time for quiet reading. Time for evening rest. Day after day, year after year, season after season, the clock never complained. It simply kept everyone moving gently through the rhythm of life. The watchmaker closes his eyes for just a moment. He can almost hear those old bells echoing across peaceful stone courtyards. Then his attention moves to another small treasure. An old grandmother's clock. Not a grandfather clock. This one is much smaller. Just the right size for a cozy sitting room. Its paint has faded. Its corners are worn smooth. Someone clearly dusted it with love for many years. Perhaps every Sunday afternoon. Perhaps every holiday. Perhaps whenever grandchildren came to visit. The watchmaker imagines an elderly woman winding it every Friday evening. Always the same routine. A gentle turn of the key. A quiet smile. Then tea. Simple habits often become our happiest memories. Not because they are exciting, but because they make life feel steady. He gently winds the little clock. Just once. The spring answers with the faintest sound, almost like a sleepy sigh. Across the room hangs a large railway station clock. This white face is easy to read. The numbers are bold. His hands are strong. thousands of travelers may once have looked up at this very clock, some rushing to catch trains, some saying goodbye, some returning home after years away. Imagine all those footsteps, the whistles, the steam, the excitement, and through it all, the clock calmly watched every arrival and every departure, never choosing favorites, simply measuring every precious minute. The watchmaker often thinks that clocks are wonderful listeners. They hear laughter, they hear tears, they hear celebrations, they hear quiet goodbyes, yet they never interrupt. Perhaps that is why people trusted them so much. Near the back of the workshop rests one final clock. It is very small. Its painted birds have almost faded away. The little wooden case has tiny carved stars around its edges. It looks like something made especially for a child. Maybe it once stood beside a small bed. Perhaps every birthday morning, the child would wake up, look at the clock, and wonder how much longer until cake. Or perhaps the clock helped count down the days until Christmas. Children have always been very good at asking one important question. Is it time yet? The answer, quite often, was sitting quietly on a nearby shelf. The watchmaker laughs softly. Some questions never change. As he continues rebuilding the ancient clock before him, he realizes something he has believed. For many years, people do not truly collect clocks. They collect moments. The clocks simply help protect those moments. Every scratch, every faded number, every worn key, every polished corner. They are tiny reminders that real people once laughed, worked, celebrated, worried, hoped, and dreamed while these clocks quietly counted every passing second. The workshop grows even quieter. Outside, the rain has stopped completely. Moonlight spills through the dusty window, covering the workbench with a soft silver glow. One by one, the cleaned gears disappear back inside the ancient clock. The movement slowly takes shape again. The little machine that had slept for so many years is beginning to remember how to breathe. The watchmaker carefully places the final gear into position. He studies the mechanism for a long moment. Everything is finally where it belongs. Now comes the most delicate part of all. It is almost time to see if this forgotten heart can beat once more. The workshop is quieter now than it has been all night. Outside, the rain has stopped, leaving tiny drops of water clinging to the window. The narrow street beyond is empty, washed clean by the gentle shower. A cool breeze slips through the old alley, carrying the fresh smell of wet stone and damp earth. Inside, the world feels warm. A small fire crackles softly inside the old cast-iron stove in the corner of the room. The candles have burned lower, their flames smaller now, painting long golden shadows across the shelves. Of silent clocks, the watchmaker takes a slow breath. Everything is ready. The ancient clock has been cleaned. Its gears have been polished. The spring has been inspected. Every tiny screw has returned to its proper place. Now comes the moment every restoration waits for. Will it live again? He gently lifts the movement with both hands and settles it back inside its wooden case. The fit is perfect, just as it was many centuries ago. No force, no struggle, only patience. He reaches for the pendulum. Long, simple, elegant. It hangs quietly beneath the movement, waiting for its first swing in many, many years. The watchmaker gives it the lightest touch. The pendulum moves to the left, then to the right, then back again. But after only a few swings, it stops. The old man smiles. He doesn't look disappointed. In fact, he almost expected it. Ancient clocks are a little like old friends waking from a very long nap. They don't always jump out of bed on the first try. Sometimes they need a little encouragement. He adjusts a tiny screw no larger than a grain of rice. Just one small turn. Nothing more. Again, he starts the pendulum. Left, right, left, right. This time it swings a little longer. The workshop listens. So does the watchmaker. He isn't watching the clock anymore. He's listening to it. That may sound strange, but experienced watchmakers often trust their ears more than their eyes. A healthy clock has a balanced rhythm. Tick, tock, tick, tock. If one sound is louder than the other, something is slightly wrong. If the pause between them feels uneven, another adjustment is needed. The old man closes his eyes. The tiny sounds fill the quiet room. He tilts his head just a little, then opens his eyes again. Almost, he whispers. One more adjustment, barely enough to notice. The difference is so small that most people would never see it. But clocks notice, and the watchmaker notices too. He gently nudges the pendulum once more. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Better, much better. The rhythm now feels smooth, steady, comforting, like slow footsteps along a peaceful country road, or gentle waves meeting the shore. The old man smiles quietly, not because the work is finished, but because the clock is beginning to trust him. Many people think repairing an old clock is about fixing broken parts. The watchmaker has never believed that. To him, restoration is more like a conversation. The clock speaks. The watchmaker listens. Then he answers with careful hands. Little by little, they understand each other. He reaches for another tiny bottle of oil. One final drop is placed where two gears meet, not because they cannot move without it, but because he wants them to move gently. Kindness, even toward old machines, has always been one of his habits. The fire crackles softly behind him. A log settles with a quiet pop. The warmth spreads through the workshop, mixing with the comforting smell of old wood, warm brass, candle wax, and freshly polished oak. It is the sort of room where hours pass without anyone noticing. Perhaps that is fitting. After all, this is a place entirely devoted to time. The watchmaker checks the clock again. Still ticking, still steady. He reaches for a small notebook lying beside the workbench. Its pages are yellow with age. Inside are careful handwritten notes. The date each clock arrived, its condition, the repairs completed, the final adjustments. Some entries are nearly 40 years old. Others were written only last week. He dips his pen into a bottle of dark ink and writes one more line beneath today's date. Movement cleaned, spring restored, escapement adjusted, running smoothly. He waits a moment before adding one final word. Patiently, he smiles to himself. That word seems to describe almost everything in this workshop. The clocks are patient. The tools are patient. Even the dust has been patient. Outside, the clouds slowly drift away from the moon. Silver light spills through the window, joining the warm glow of the candles. The two lights meet across the workbench, making the polished brass gears shimmer like tiny pieces of gold. Around the room, Hundreds of silent clocks continue waiting on their shelves. Some will need new springs. Others need missing hands. A few may simply need someone willing to spend an afternoon listening before reaching for a screwdriver. The watchmaker knows he cannot restore them all tonight, and that is perfectly fine. Old clocks have already waited decades. They can wait one more evening. There is no prize for finishing first. No audience clapping. No stopwatch counting down. Only quiet work done with care. The ancient clock continues its slow rhythm. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The sound fills the workshop without becoming loud. Instead, it blends into the peaceful silence, as though it has always belonged there. The old man leans back in his wooden chair. For the first time all night, he allows himself a short rest. He wraps both hands around a warm cup of tea that has nearly gone cold. He takes one small sip. Even cold tea tastes pleasant in a peaceful room. He watches the pendulum continue its endless journey. Left, right, never rushing, never stopping without reason. The watchmaker has often thought that people could learn something from old clocks. They don't worry about yesterday. They don't hurry toward tomorrow. They simply keep moving, one steady moment at a time. The fire burns a little lower. The candles grow shorter. Beyond the workshop window, the eastern sky begins to lose a tiny bit of its darkness. Morning is still far away, but somewhere beyond the hills, dawn has already started its slow journey. The watchmaker stands once more. He gently places his fingertips against the side of the restored clock. Feels alive again, not because it is perfect, but because it is working exactly as it was always meant to. He smiles. The longest part of the night is almost over, and very soon, this quiet workshop will be filled with something it has been waiting all night to hear. Not just one ticking clock, but many. The ancient clock keeps ticking. Softly, steadily, patiently. The watchmaker listens for several quiet minutes without touching a single tool. He has learned, over the years, that the best way to test a restored clock is not by staring at it, but by giving it time. After all, clocks deserve that more than anything. The pendulum continues its gentle journey. Left, right, left, right. Its rhythm fills the workshop like a slow heartbeat. The old man smiles with quiet satisfaction. Then, without saying a word, he walks toward another shelf where a small carriage clock has been waiting for its turn. Its brass case reflects the warm candlelight. He winds it carefully. 1 turn, 2 turns, 3. Then he gives the tiny balance wheel the gentlest nudge. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, tick, a tiny sound, almost too quiet to hear. A few seconds later, tick, again. The little carriage clock has found its voice. The watchmaker places it beside the ancient clock. Now 2 clocks tick together. Not perfectly, not at exactly the same moment. One is slightly faster, the other a little slower, yet somehow they sound beautiful together. It reminds him of 2 friends walking side by side, each taking slightly different steps, but heading in the same direction. Across the room, he notices a small French mantel clock. Its golden decorations catch the light as he gently lifts it onto the workbench. This clock has already been repaired many weeks ago. Tonight, it only needs winding. He inserts the tiny key. Turn, turn, turn. Then he waits. A soft click. Another. Then tick, tick, tick. Now 3 clocks are awake. The workshop begins to change. The silence is still there, but now it is filled with tiny rhythms. Some clocks tick deeply. Some sound light and cheerful. Others have slow, thoughtful voices. Each one is different. Just as no two people laugh exactly the same way, no two clocks keep time with exactly the same sound. The watchmaker has always loved that. Modern machines often sound identical. Ancient clocks never do. Each carries its own little personality. He slowly walks around the room, stopping beside one shelf after another. Some clocks need only a gentle winding. Others require a tiny adjustment. One old pocket watch refuses to start. The watchmaker chuckles. "Still sleepy, are you?" He gives it the smallest tap with his fingertip. Immediately, tick. "There you are," he whispers. Sometimes even clocks need a little encouragement before breakfast. Although, thankfully, clocks never ask for toast. Little by little, more voices join the workshop. Tick, tick, tick-tock, tick, tock. The sounds overlap without becoming noisy. Instead, they blend together into something almost musical. Not a song with words, a song with rhythm. The old workshop no longer feels empty. It feels alive. The shelves that had seemed so quiet only hours ago now seem full of gentle conversations. Every clock speaks in its own language, and somehow they all understand one another. The watchmaker stands very still in the middle of the room. He closes his eyes. Many people think silence means hearing nothing. He knows better. Real silence is hearing peaceful things. Rain on a window, a crackling fire, leaves moving in the wind. And tonight, hundreds of tiny clocks quietly measuring another peaceful night. Outside, the clouds slowly drift away. Moonlight shines through the dusty windows, covering the workshop in soft silver light. The candles are nearly gone now. Their flames grow smaller with every passing minute. Soon they will no longer be needed. Morning is getting closer. The old man walks toward the tallest grandfather clock standing proudly in the corner. For years, its pendulum has remained still. Tonight, he gives it one careful push. The heavy brass pendulum swings. Slowly, gracefully, left, right, left, right. A deep tick echoes gently across the room. Then, tock. Its voice is lower than all the others. Strong, calm, wise, almost like an old storyteller clearing his throat before beginning another tale. The watchmaker smiles. Welcome back. The workshop feels complete now. Not because every clock has been repaired. Many still wait patiently for another night. But enough voices have returned to remind the room what it was built for. Keeping time, protecting memories, sharing quiet moments. The old man sits once again in his wooden chair. He does nothing, absolutely nothing, and somehow that feels like the perfect ending to a long night's work. Sometimes the greatest reward is simply watching something continue without needing your help anymore. He folds his hands in his lap. The clocks continue their endless rhythm without him. Tick, tock, tick, tock, minute after minute. The eastern sky beyond the workshop window begins to change. The black night slowly softens into deep blue. Then a gentle shade of gray. The first hint of dawn quietly appears above the rooftops. Morning birds begin singing somewhere in the distance. Very softly at first. One bird, then another. The sounds mix gently with the ticking clocks, nature keeping one rhythm, the workshop keeping another. For a brief moment, it feels as though the whole world is waking together. The watchmaker opens the window just a little. Fresh morning air slips inside. It carries the scent of wet grass, old stone, and blooming flowers from nearby gardens. The room feels fresh, peaceful, alive. Golden sunlight slowly replaces the fading candlelight. Tiny dust particles float through the warm beams of morning light, dancing lazily above the workbench. The old man watches them with a gentle smile. People often think his work is about fixing clocks. But deep inside, he knows it has always been something more. Every repaired clock is another story allowed to continue. Another family memory protected. Another piece of history given one more chance to quietly count the passing hours. There is no applause waiting outside. No newspaper writing about tonight's work. No crowd gathered at the workshop door. And that is perfectly all right. Some of the most important work in the world happens quietly, without anyone noticing. The ancient clock continues its steady heartbeat beside him. The carriage clock answers. The mantel clock joins in. The grandfather clock keeps its deep, comforting rhythm. Together, they fill the workshop with a peaceful chorus that has not been heard here for many years. The watchmaker takes one last slow look around the room. His smile is small, almost impossible to notice, but it is enough, because sometimes a quiet smile says everything words never could. And as the first golden rays of sunrise reach the old wooden floor, the workshop seems to whisper a simple message. Time may move forward, but with patient hands and a caring heart, the past never truly falls silent. The first light of morning quietly fills the workshop. The candles have almost burned away now. Their small flames give one last gentle flicker before the watchmaker carefully blows them out one by one. The room becomes a little darker for a moment. Then the soft golden sunlight takes over. It slips through the dusty windows, stretching across the old wooden floor and warming the shelves where hundreds of clocks now rest peacefully. The workshop feels different than it did at midnight. Not louder, not busier, simply lighter. The old watchmaker stands slowly from his chair. His back is a little stiff after many hours of careful work. He smiles to himself. That is simply part of growing older. Ancient clocks need oil. Old knees need a slow stretch. Everyone has something that helps them keep going. He walks quietly around the room for one final inspection. First, the little carriage clock, still ticking. Then the French mantel clock, keeping perfect time. The old grandfather clock. This heavy pendulum swings with calm confidence. Left, right, left, right. Every clock seems happy to be doing what it was made to do. The watchmaker gently adjusts one clock by less than a single second. Most people would never notice such a tiny change. He notices. That is enough. He has never worked for perfection. He has worked for balance. There is a difference. Perfection asks impossible things. Balance simply asks us to do our best. The old man returns each tool to its proper place. The smallest screwdriver goes into its wooden drawer. The tiny tweezers rest beside the polishing cloth. The little bottles of oil are lined up neatly on the shelf. Every brush is cleaned before being put away. Some people enjoy finishing a project. The watchmaker enjoys putting the tools away almost as much. To him, cleaning the workshop is simply the final step of every repair. Nothing is left out. Nothing is forgotten. The workbench slowly becomes empty again. Only the restored clock remains in the center. It ticks quietly as if saying a soft thank you. The watchmaker places a gentle hand on its wooden case. Its surface is smooth and warm from the morning sunlight. Years ago, someone built this clock with incredible care. Years later, someone else protected it. Now it has found its way here. He likes to think he is only one small part of a much longer story. Every generation cares for something before passing it to the next. That may be the greatest kind of teamwork there is. Outside, the town begins to wake. A baker unlocks a shop a few streets away. The smell of fresh bread drifts gently through the cool morning air. Somewhere nearby, a horse slowly pulls a wooden cart across the stone road. Its footsteps echo softly between the old buildings. A bird lands on the workshop windowsill and sings a cheerful little tune. The watchmaker listens. He smiles. The clocks answer in their own quiet way. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The sounds blend together so naturally that they almost become part of the morning itself. For a few peaceful minutes, the watchmaker simply stands and listens. No repairs, no polishing, no adjustments, just listening. Many people spend their lives chasing time, always running, always hurrying, always looking at the next hour. The old watchmaker has spent his life doing the opposite. He has learned to sit with time, to respect it, to notice it. Perhaps that is why his workshop always feels so peaceful. Nothing here competes with time. Everything moves together with it. He walks toward the front door. Before opening it, he turns around for one last look. The shelves are full once again. Not every clock is perfect. Some still wait patiently for their own turn. But that has never bothered him. There will always be another evening, another quiet night, another forgotten clock with another forgotten story. And he is perfectly happy with that. He gently closes the cover of the ancient clock's case. The polished brass shines softly beneath the morning light. It no longer looks tired. It simply looks experienced. Like an old traveler who has finally found a comfortable place to rest. The watchmaker hangs his apron on its wooden hook beside the door. He brushes a little dust from his sleeves. A little dust always remains. He doesn't mind. In a workshop like this, dust is not the enemy. It is simply proof that time has passed. He opens the old wooden door. Fresh morning air fills the room. The town outside is beginning another ordinary day. People will hurry to work. Children will laugh on their way to school. Shopkeepers will greet their first customers. Someone will check the time before catching a train. Someone else will wind an old family clock without thinking much about it. Life will continue, just as it always has. The watchmaker steps outside for a moment. He locks the workshop door with a small brass key. Then he places the key carefully into his pocket. Behind that old wooden door, hundreds of clocks continue their gentle chorus. He can still hear them faintly through the walls. Tick, tock, tick, tock. A peaceful reminder that every second is quietly becoming part of history. Before he walks away, he looks back one final time. The workshop is small, old, a little dusty, easy to overlook. But inside those weathered walls, countless memories have been protected with patient hands. not through great inventions, not through fame, simply through quiet care. And perhaps that is the real lesson hidden inside this little workshop. Time cannot be stopped. No watchmaker, no matter how skilled, can change that. But memories can be cared for. History can be preserved. Beautiful things can be repaired instead of replaced. Sometimes all they need is patience, and someone willing to listen. As the morning sun climbs higher into the sky, the old watchmaker disappears down the narrow stone street. The workshop fades into silence once more, or at least the kind of silence filled with hundreds of gentle ticking clocks. Thank you for spending this peaceful night inside the watchmaker's workshop. I hope these quiet hours helped you relax, slow your thoughts, and drift a little closer to sleep. If you enjoyed tonight's journey, don't forget to subscribe to the Sleepy Eyes for more cozy history bedtime stories. And before you close your eyes, leave a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from. I always love seeing how many different places come together for these quiet adventures. Until next time, sleep well, and wherever life takes you tomorrow, may you always find a little time to slow down, listen carefully, and appreciate the gentle rhythm of every passing moment. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Good night.